Okay, let me know when you can see me, guys. We'll just call this part 2. Am I back? Can you see me? There we go. Okay, cool. So I guess we're just going to call that part 1. At least it was nice enough to cut out at a half-hour mark. That'll make it easier to splice. Good stuff, Twitch. So I guess this will be the first ever split episode of IAD-TV. Anyway, that works out. So to give you guys an example of an important thought process to use when you're learning the neutral game, when I first picked, or when Accent Core came out, I went through kind of a character crisis. I didn't like a lot of the nerfs to Anji, and I felt they were really unjustified, and it pissed me off, and I was pretty salty about it, for better or for worse. I'm not even gonna lie, I was whiny about it and didn't like it. So I kind of switched characters a lot because I was sick of playing a character that felt underpowered. I'd done it in multiple games, finally got a good version of Anji and Slash, and then, was like, well, shit. So as I kind of switched characters a lot, I remember a specific example where I had picked up Venom again. I played Venom at Final Round in 2008, and I'd kind of been set on playing him again because I played him in Reload for a while as my main character. And I went down to St. Louis to get some games in with AKA and Super Effects, and I remember I got my brains beat out, like 50 straight between the two of them. Like, they were just letting me play, and they were switching off because I was still adjusting the characters and stuff, and I got obliterated. It was the worst stretch of Guilty Gear I'd ever played in my life. And, I wasn't getting upset. I wasn't salty. I was just very frustrated and really just didn't know what to do. I'm like, God, I can't play today. My character feels worthless, and I know Venom's a good character in that game. So we took a break and went and got some food and chilled out. And AKA, just kind of out of nowhere, asked me a question that has stuck with me for a very long time in terms of Guilty Gear and in terms of fighting games. And he just asked me, he's like, dude, when you're playing, are you looking at your character or are you looking at mine? And I didn't answer right away. I thought about this for a second, and I'm like, I'm kind of staring at Venom all the time because I'm trying to set up stuff and get ball formations out and considering options. And he said, when you played Anji, who did you look at? And I thought about it, and I'm like, I always was watching the entire game. I wasn't staring at my character. I was watching the opponent, figuring out what they do and how to react to it and that sort of thing. And it really hit home with me. And this is actually when I switched back to Anji and Accent Core. I just decided, screw it. Let me just play him. I ended up winning like 5 straight games out of nowhere, which, told me that I had wasted about a year and a half of my time by not switching. But that's not the point. The point I want you to get out of this is you'll know you're starting to feel comfortable with your mobility and your neutral game options when you stop looking at your character and you start focusing on the opponents and what they're doing and what kind of spaces and options you need to be covered and worrying about. I can't give you a handbook on how to do this. It's just something that you should work on. If you find yourself staring at your character or always wondering how to, like you want to start a risky offensive strat, stuff like that, work on trying to watch the opponent. Watch what your opponent is doing. Watch their movement patterns. What are they looking to do? How are they looking to start their offensive game? How are they looking to control the match into their favor? And when you're doing that and you're paying attention to them and what you're doing is just second nature, that's a good sign that you're picking up not just the neutral game, but you're picking up the game in general. In neutral, though, that's extremely important because you have to look at the whole scope of the game and the stage. You have to consider how much space is between you. What space do you want to close or open up? Where do your pokes work? Where does your mobility take you that's going to benefit you and be a detriment to them? So that's a really important trick, and I give AKA a lot of credit for kind of putting that in my head. And I ask AKA all the time for thoughts and tips when I'm writing scripts for the show, when I'm jotting down notes. And so I send him a lot of questions, and he's always willing to help me out. So that's really, really important to me, and he's a good friend. But just we'll just call that a little nugget of wisdom you can all take that AKA gave me many years ago. So we talked about mobility. We talked about how pokes and space control with your pokes and your normals work. So let's talk about the rest of your typical options, your special moves and supers in 2. There are a lot of special moves in Guilty Gear that allow you to close ground or really take maybe a risk or a shot in the neutral game to tip it quickly into your favor and exit out of the neutral game. Anji is a perfect example of this. And he, like I said, he has his long sweeping moves. Down forward kick is really good in this game. It's a really nice buff it's gotten. His forward slash, his stand heavy, forward punch stuffs, air dashes, all that fun stuff. But Anji has a unique move in the neutral game that has to be respected, and that move is hard slash Fujin. Hard slash Fujin has a lot of invulnerability to strikes during its animation. It has a lot of ways to go through projectiles or long-range pokes or various space-controlling moves and counter-hit you out of it. So something I can add into the neutral game amongst all the jumping around and spacing and air and ground and air footsies and the poking is if I see you starting a pattern, you know, say I catch Slayer just kind of throwing out standing kick in a way that I think I might be able to get through. This is not a perfect example because stand kick's going to be hard to hard slash Fujin through, but just imagine a poke that or a projectile that's really easy to go through. I might get to a space where I can utilize the invulnerability on hard slash Fujin to strikes and then get in. And I'm either going to at least get you to block it, or if I time it right, I'm probably going to get a counter hit, can do his combo, all that sort of fun stuff. There are situations and moves like this all throughout Guilty Gear, and this is why I talk about the neutral game being extremely fluid. Very, very, very fluid. It changes with every single matchup in very different ways. But stuff like this, you don't see these sorts of options you have to deal with in Street Fighter very often. The closest thing that you could see in Street Fighter would be Turn Punch from Boxer. Think of hard slash Fujin as like a turn punch that doesn't have to be charged, and then has, you know, a shitload of options after it if it gets blocked, including a high-low throw game and then a pressure guard gauge crank game. You know, stuff that's all native to Guilty Gear. You have to consider every option your opponent has in the neutral game. You have to consider special moves like hard slash Fujin that have invulnerability or that can go through or under things. Grand Viper from Soul is an excellent example. Grand Viper can go under a lot of moves. It's insanely risky if it gets blocked and he doesn't have meter to Roman cancel it, but it could get him in and he gets a clean hit and then he does Sidewinder combos and life kind of sucks for you. You have to respect that move. It's part of the neutral game. You can be this far away, and if he catches you throwing out a move that doesn't hit low and thinks he can grab, you know, take a risk and hit you with Grand Viper and it works, you know, the risk-reward may not be in his favor, but people will do things with risk-reward that don't go in their favor. Those have to be considered. So Guilty Gear is full of those kind of moves. You have to consider supers as well. Let's give Slayer some meter here. So, as I've talked about before, Slayer has this wonderful super called Dead on Time. In Accent Core, it was pretty amazing, because it had no frames of startup after the flash. If you were doing anything, you were probably going to get hit, probably going to get counter hit. Now it does have one frame of startup after the flash of the super, so it's not as much of a guarantee that you're going to get smacked, but this is a big-time neutral game tool for Slayer. He can be all the way over here, just zoning with his basic pokes and anti-airs and such. And if he has 50%, you have to consider this a threat in the neutral game. You can't just throw out whatever you want. You can't just sit around and go, you know, I'll do this, or I might try and hit with standing heavy from full screen. Why would you do this? Who knows? But if you do something like that and Slayer catches you and goes, bam, he's used a hole in your neutral game and poked it open for big damage. You could argue that having Dead on Time is not necessarily neutral, that him getting meter actually gives him a form of offensive advantage just because of Dead on Time's ability to cover space. But it's still an addition to the neutral game. He took his pokes and his special moves, you know, another special move. He has Mach Punch, that sort of thing. That covers a ton of space and is a good way to close the gap in a neutral game. You know, using it from that distance, you're not looking to end the round, not looking to hit a massive combo. You're looking to cover the space and beat someone out in the neutral game from moving around. You have to consider all those options. So the pokes, the mobility, and then the various special moves and supers. And again, this is why the neutral game is so fluid and why matchups are of utmost importance when you're trying to learn your neutral game. So, next I'm going to go into specific examples with a few different characters who play different types of neutral games and how they utilize it. But before I go into that, do you guys have questions? Do you want something explained more about the neutral game and the base of how it works? Remember, these aren't hard and fast rules. This is a basic concept to hopefully make the neutral game a little bit easier to grasp. So take a time out here and feel free to fire away some questions or ideas if you want to know more, you know, if you want something explained further before I get into character-specific examples. Anything. Because if we're cool, then we can go ahead and move on, but like I said, which characters do I think have the best and worst neutral game? That's a really subjective question, and I can't give you a good answer. I can tell you, because again, we talked about mobility being so key in Guilty Gear, because you're not just playing the neutral game on the ground, it's the entirety of the air in the stage because characters can move so much. High mobility characters like Millie and Chip have a strong neutral game just because of their ability to cover space and move around quickly. Characters like Dizzy, especially in this game, have a very, very strong neutral game because they can close ground quickly. She has double air dash to close ground quickly. She can cover the screen with her fish and spikes and lasers and all that fun stuff. So, you know, there's not really characters with bad neutral games, so to speak. It's just that what they're trying to do is very different. If I had to pick a character with the weakest neutral game, you could probably argue for Justice in a way, because Justice's neutral game is actually her offensive game. She wants to zone and create space and just make you block things at a distance. That's where she excels. And that's probably not even fair on my part because Justice is still new and is still kind of being fleshed out. So to say her neutral game is weaker is kind of a guesstimate on my part. I wouldn't label characters as having best and worst. There's just different neutral games. There are definitely matchups where one character maybe does the things that another character wants to do in the neutral game and does them better. And that would be a situation where if you're fighting another character whose neutral game is similar to yours, but they excel at it a little bit better than you do, that's a problem. That's usually where a lot of bad matchups happen. Easiest and hardest neutral game is even more difficult to discuss because, again, it's all matchup based. You know, playing the neutral game with what's a good example? Playing the neutral game with Dizzy against, say, Potemkin is fairly straightforward. She has tons of things that hit multiple times, and she can just zone him and play a basic neutral game and keep him out of his main game for a long time. But that's a combination of the neutral game, her zoning, her mobility, and her offensive game that she can transition to. So there's not a hard and fast, easy or hard neutral game. There are just situations that are more difficult for a character than other situations. So that's kind of the point I've been talking about. When I call the neutral game fluid, it really does change matchup to matchup and situation to situation. Like I said, with Slayer, you know, if I'm Anji and I'm playing Slayer, the neutral game is not easy, but it's manageable. But as soon as Slayer has 50%, I have a big extra deal to worry about with dead on time. So suddenly the neutral game has gotten more difficult for me to play. So it's very fluid. It changes on the fly. So those sorts of, you know, if I were to give you a tier list of the neutral game, that doesn't exist. There's no way to try and quantify it like that. So neutral game is very much about your matchups. Any other questions on the basis, the crust of the neutral game pie, so to speak, before we move forward? Not? Okay, cool. Let's go into specific examples. We'll go ahead and flesh out Anji a little bit more since I've kind of been using him as an example the whole time. What do you expect to play Anji? Slayer still guarding? Yeah, so let's have Slayer not guard. Oops. And guard off. Okay. So, Anji in the neutral game. What are the general things he wants to utilize in his neutral game? We'll start with the mobility again. One of his best tools is his super jump. His super jump covers a lot of ground. It goes a long ways, and you can do stuff like super jump, jump kick. This is a good air-to-air priority move. It can beat out a lot of things, especially at the right ranges and angles. He also has his super jump dust, which stalls his momentum, but this move has really good priority. It's a good way to stuff people who are jumping around and trying to closes the neutral game in the air, that sort of thing. So his high jump movement is one of the first major things in his neutral game repertoire. His air dashes are there, but they're not particularly impressive. They're pretty average. You know, he's got a solid speed forward air dash. His air dash backs up. It's pretty basic in terms of Anji. So his high jump is a unique movement tool in his neutral game, and it's very useful to either close ground or jump away and kind of reset things to a more distant game if you don't like where the situation is, that sort of thing. His pokes, we talked about, /, again, covers ground and airspace, really good. Standing heavy, covers a lot of space. Used to be an amazing neutral game tool when it had auto guard, but unfortunately hasn't had that for 2 games now. His down forward kick is a really good low, long-range poke. It can late cancel into stuff like hard / Fujin, so it has to be respected in the neutral game. Something as simple as getting that at max range and making them block it, you don't even have to hit them with it. That can transition you out of neutral and into a chance to do damage. His sweep, which has been improved in this game, it has a longer max range, has a little bit better hitbox on the end of it, so that's a way to play the neutral game with just a classic I'm gonna out-footsie you kind of thing, you know. If you're both walking back and forth or dashing back and forth trying to get to that sweet spot and you catch him with a trip, there you go. You've gotten out of the neutral game nicely. Let's see. We talked about hard / Fujin as an example because of the mobility, how that's kind of a unique thing. Again, if you're from Street Fighter, think of this as tap, as turnaround punch from Boxer that doesn't need charge, leads into a shitload of damage, and has options after it, even on block. We talked about the ability to zone with Butterfly. And now, even more so, Force Break Butterfly, which goes so far and creates all sorts of havoc in terms of what it does. This beats almost every projectile in the game. It will just keep going through it. It doesn't care. And you can combine this in the neutral game by doing something as simple as using Force Break Butterfly, and then if they don't back up or they don't have anywhere to go and they try to jump over it, which is the natural reaction. This is a pretty standard fighting game reaction. Long screen fireball, I'm going to jump over it. Well, now he has Force Break On, which is a far-reaching command grab. So for 50% meter, I can create this situation in the neutral game where you either have to block the butterfly, you have to back way up, or if you jump, I can probably snag you for something like this. Now, that's not a guaranteed thing. There are options out of that, but that's a good way to create a lot of neutral game coverage that could quickly turn into my favor. And, of course, the other good tool Anji has in his neutral game, and this kind of leads back into that idea of I don't necessarily have to go get to them and start the pressure myself. Maybe I can bait them into a situation that benefits me, and that's his auto guard moves. Forward kick will beat a lot of jump-ins and anti-airs and stuff like that with its auto guard and give you either a counter hit that you can try and get a combo out of, or you can combo out, or you can use your auto guard counters out of it to get a knockdown. Here, we'll just record Slayer. Slayer, do that. That works. Except I don't have the playback button because I am pro. Oops. So, Slayer. That was okay. There we go. This is so hard to do with this up top. There we go. Auto guard counter, gets a knockdown, that sort of thing. So auto guard is something that has to be respected and utilized in the neutral game as well. We talked about earlier about forward punch, baiting people who blatantly instant air dash at you and knocking them out of their stuff because of its upper body invulnerability, that sort of thing. So that's Anji's basic neutral game. I'm going to put my reset back here because it's handy to have. So, what is the goal out of his neutral game? Well, we talked about. I have two major things I really want when I'm playing Anji. The first and foremost one is I want a knockdown. I don't care how I get it out of the neutral game. I don't care if I knock you out of the air and you can't tech. I don't care if I snag you with a max range sweep. I don't care if I get over something and I'm able to throw you out of recovery because you whiff something you shouldn't have. Or if I hit you with hard slash Fujin, do a combo and then, get a knockdown that way. Doesn't matter how, I want that knockdown because Anji excels with Okazeme. He wants to put the butterfly on you and do all that sort of fun stuff. The secondary goal would be the pressure game because he has his pressure and frame traps in this game and his ability to crank guard gauge with the changes to his normals. So Anji is a very basic character in the neutral game, much like most of his game is. He wants basic things and has a good number of tools, but no real special or unique tools outside of stuff like hard slash Fujin in the neutral game. He has good pokes, solid normals, a couple high risk reward moves that can be used in the neutral game, and a unique movement option with his really, really far reaching high jump. So that's one example of the neutral game. No matter who I'm playing with Anji, these tools are all valid. There's almost no time where suddenly like, well, I'm never going to use high jump because so-and-so shuts it down. No, that doesn't exist. There are plenty of situations where it's really risky and stupid to throw out hard slash Fujin willy-nilly, especially since I have better tools to utilize now. But in general, all those options are going to be viable, and you'll pick and choose from them based on the matchup and the situation. So, there's one type of neutral game with a more specific example. Let's do another one. Let's look at Milia. Whoever. Axel. This actually is a pretty famous matchup in its own right. Okay. So Milia. Again, let's start with the mobility options. Milia, as you all know, is fast as hell. Super fast backdash, very fast dash, double air dash, super jump into double air dash, and then has some other unique mobility options. She has turbo fall, which allows her to get to the ground quickly. She has the ability to air dash cancel, which isn't so much a neutral game thing, but it's still there if she happens to get you to block something in the air. That's a way she can transition out of the neutral game in midair, which is kind of handy. So, her high mobility and all these movement options, and just in general the fact that she's one of the fastest characters in the game, means her mobility is by far one of the most important and strong parts of her neutral game. Like other characters, she has good poke. She has 5S, which is a solid, just standing mid-poke that can catch things. She has her long-range sweep, which gets a knockdown, which obviously is really good for Milia. Her forward heavy has good range and can be utilized in a lot of situations to catch people. It's not a super strong neutral game tool. It's more of a frame trap tool than it is anything else, other than combos. But it's still there. You have to respect it. It has good range. Excuse me. The biggest thing Milia has in the neutral game, and this may be, you guys, or somebody asked me about, best neutral game. I can't tell you who has the best neutral game, but I can tell you who has one of the single best neutral game tools, hands down, and it's Milia, and it's hairpin. That move has to be respected at all times. If she has the hairpin, she has the ability to transfer out of neutral game very quickly with very, very little openings, or honestly no opening at all. If she catches you doing something stupid and can throw the hairpin in, she's going to be able to make you deal with it. It's a free get-in tool. If you block this, Milia is getting in. You are not going to be able to stop her if she's using proper spacing. And she has two versions of it. She can delay it and do a different angle, that sort of thing. There is the major change here in Accent Core, which is that she has a much greater delay before she can pick the hairpin back up. So that's kind of an important alteration to the neutral game. If I'm playing as Milia and running around and I decide to go ahead and burn hairpin and get in on you, and you weather the storm and maybe push me out, you don't have to sit on that hairpin like you used to. It actually has a bit of time before I can even attempt to pick it up. But now that I don't have that, suddenly my neutral game isn't as strong anymore. I have Jumping Dust, which is a big air poke. I still have my ground pokes, and I still have all the mobility. But I don't have this move where I can be all the way up here and just make you absolutely respect my portion of the neutral game. This whole area is really easy for her to cover, and she can adjust it. If she sees you jumping, you know, say I'm up here and I'm going to throw the hairpin, and I see Axel try to jump, well, I can throw the higher range one and maybe catch him, and then air dash in and start a basic pressure game in the air. This is a ridiculous neutral game tool. You don't see this kind of tool in neutral game very often. So neutral game with Milia, when you're playing as her, your neutral game is stronger when you have the hairpin, because it's always your trump card, so to speak. It's your way to transition out of neutral almost whenever you like, for the most part, if you're using it intelligently. When you don't have the hairpin, you have to be a little bit more creative. You have to play footsie. You have to know how to use her pokes and how to get in and how to avoid things with her mobility. So hairpin is huge. It's really important for her. She also has another projectile that's pretty handy in the neutral game, but not nearly as much so as the hairpin, and that's Secret Garden. If you have enough space and you can program the bubble, this creates a really unique neutral game opportunity, because you get to control where it goes, and you actually get to kind of read the mind of your opponent. They don't know for sure what way you program Secret Garden. You can just do something as simple as just send it across the top of the screen, and then you can dash forward and cover the bottom, and they have to make the decision. You can do, if I could actually do inputs right, do something as simple as just create an up-down pattern and create a shield wall in front of yourself that kind of aids in the neutral game. If they try to jump over it and guess that you were going to send it towards them, well, they might run into it, and now you get to transition to offensive advantage. That's one of those situations where you get someone to hang themselves, basically. So Secret Garden, if you have the room to do it, is a useful neutral game tool. And it's good to note that if you see it and they're calling you out on it, well, you can just cancel it with Dust. You know, say I start Secret Garden, all of a sudden Axel starts running at me because he knows what I'm doing, and he's going to be able to hit me before I finish doing the inputs and recover from the move. Well, just there, cancel out. Now we're back to playing the neutral game, or maybe I'll be at slight disadvantage, but at least I'm not going to get counter hit. So there's another useful tool. And then, of course, one more good tool Milia has is her roll. This gets under lows. It's not as invulnerable to things as it used to be, but it's still a good way to beat basic pokes and stuff like that and get in and do a throw and then start Milia's game.